Truly the nectar of the gods.
Honestly.
Hello and welcome to the Morose Garden. I am Allie.
I'm Stevie.
And we're going to talk to you today about the Satanic Panic. The Satanic Panic, also commonly referred to as ritual abuse, seemed to have began in about 1980 with the book Michelle Remembers, in which a psychiatrist and his patient, who later became his wife, but that's not weird at all, released a book where she had these memories of being ritually abused, supposedly, that she got through like a memory regression therapy, which has like since been proved to be absolute BS.
Mm-hmm.
So that sparked this thing where people started also saying that they were having these memories through memory regression therapy. So that was in 1980. People start coming forward and it starts like kind of building from there. Mm-hmm. And then in 1983 at McMartin Preschool, one of the kids accused the teachers there of ritualistically abusing them. And I think you have done some research on that if you want to talk about it.
Yeah. So the McMartin Preschool trial started in the early 80s. And that was the first accounts of satanic ritual abuse, is what it was called, or SRA. The owners of the preschool were Peggy McMartin and Ray Bucky. They opened the McMartin Preschool, and they were falsely charged with over 100 acts of ritualistic abuse on children, which never came to be of anything. Yeah. There was no charge, there was nothing that ever came of it. Nothing was ever proven. The pretrial investigation started in 1984 and went till 1987, and then they actually had the trials in 1987 to 1990. There was 7 years with no convictions. It was the longest, most expensive criminal in U.S. history. And after the event, there was more than 100 other preschools accused, which is absolutely terrible.
It kind of reminds you of like the Salem witch trials.
Yeah.
I was thinking about this the whole time I was researching it, how like different versions of the Satanic Panic that have like happened over the years.
Yeah.
Because it's not a new phenomenon. Mm-hmm. It's not even unique that it's about like Satanism, supposedly.
As far back as 63 BC, there were people believed to be called blood libels, which are anti-Semitic Canyards, which falsely accused Jews of murdering Christian boys for their blood for rituals.
That's so wild, but also somehow not surprising because, okay, and this is like me getting off on a tangent, so I apologize, but when I was reading about this, I was seeing stuff about like bringing up the Satanic Panic in reference to QAnon, you know what that is, right? And how it's like the newest version, essentially, of the Satanic, like this is where the Satanic Panic has progressed to, essentially. And they're very anti-Semitic, so that's not shocking. Like all of these things have roots in that sort of stuff, and it's gross.
It was believed that the Christian boys, they had extra special blood. They had the bougie blood.
They had the bougie blood, baby.
Yes, their blood was especially coveted. That's what's
extra special. They just really wanted it.
And went as far back as medieval times and the Roman Empire. They did a lot of well poisoning, host desecration.
Wait, well poisoning? Like poisoning the well that people drink out of?
Yeah. Because they thought
I grew up on well water. That bothers me so much.
You're like,
I mean, it wasn't like a well that you like throw a bucket down into, but like still.
Yeah, no. They did that because they thought they were
to kill them.
Yeah.
Did it work? Do you know? It's okay if you don't know.
I didn't see anything that it worked, but just that was
that
something
that
they did it.
People probably got sick, but back then getting sick could be death.
Yeah.
Because anything could be death back then.
Oh yeah. And they also claimed that the Jews used human blood to make matzos, which is bread that's eaten during Passover. And they were also accused of reenacting crucifixions.
I feel like that would mess up the bread recipe.
Yeah, because it definitely wouldn't rise.
No, it's going to kill the yeast right away.
Honestly.
I don't know what yeast needs, but I guarantee it's not Christian boy blood. Okay, sorry.
I also read that the blood libels account for unexplained deaths of children over the years, which makes sense. Because they'd just be like, oh yeah,
it was the
Satan
Jews, is what they, well, at that time it was the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And they would just blame them for everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, this led to the Salem witch trials eventually.
So it's all coming back full circle.
All full circle.
Full circle.
All the witches. Okay. Blasphemy.
We didn't plot this out well.
No.
Should we start over?
No.
Should we plot it? No. We should just be chaotic.
Yeah.
Okay.
Chaotic energy.
So I have noted that by 1983, after the McMartin,
Trial.
not the trial, but like after the first accusations happened, kind of like what you said, where there were like hundreds of schools that had been accused, just like tons of people started coming forward with like regressed memories and like their kids saying that stuff had happened to them, even though there's no evidence thereof or any sort of proof. And a lot of the confessions were like heavily coerced by police officers.
Yes.
I made a little timeline. 1985, we get a 2020 segment on Satan worship that includes things like backmasking. Do you know what that is?
No.
Okay, okay. You've heard the thing of like, if you play this record backwards, it says blah, blah, blah. That's what backmasking is. So it's like hiding hidden lyrics
Like
in reverse
yeah.
in songs.
In the Pink Floyd songs and all that.
So that's what they're saying. They're talking about backmasking.
Mm-hmm.
They are talking about like satanic graffiti and just generally rock music, which kind of goes with the backmasking, I feel like. And then you mentioned the Geraldo Rivera special that happened a few years later, I think in 1988 is what I have.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and he also interviewed Ozzy Osbourne for that, so I really need to watch it and see what Ozzy said.
I bet it was like,
that's probably exactly what it said. That's honestly, that's a quote pulled right from it. That's
oh
funny.
My god. Yeah, Geraldo, he's kind of like the most hated interviewer in history.
Is it because of that or just because?
Yeah, because he stemmed so much like panic.
Right, like scaring people, the scare tactics of the news. Don't even get me started.
Yeah, he quote estimated 1 million Satanists are in the U.S. at that time. So I mean, just
how many people were even in the U.S. at that time?
I mean, who knows?
I mean, not enough for 1 million of them to be Satanists.
No,
not that there's not Satanists out there.
Right?
You.
Which more power to you. Whatever.
I know, right?
Love that for you. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Little Baja break.
Baja break. I love that.
Baja break.
That's going in the episode. I don't care. I'm putting it somewhere. Baja break ASMR.
Did you know that there was actually a club that was founded by mothers mostly, and it's called BAD, B-A-D-D.
I did hear about that.
Bothered about Dungeons and Dragons, because that was satanic and ritualistic.
Imagine being bothered about Dungeons and Dragons.
Honestly,
like,
yeah.
I'm bothered about the fact that I don't have anyone to play Dungeons and Dragons with.
Honestly.
And I don't think it's satanic, but maybe they're secretly trying to keep it from me. But I'm chill with Satanists, so let me come play.
Right. I mean, have you seen Stranger Things? Like,
it should be booming. There should be plenty of people ready to teach me how to play this game.
Yeah, because the 80s, come on. 80s are the best.
80s are something.
I was born in the wrong time frame.
No, I'll never say that. I love cell phones. And Baja Blast didn't exist in the 80s.
True. Well,
in fact, Taco Bell in the 80s had like pizza.
Mexican pizza, probably.
Disgusting. I don't think it was Mexican. I think it was just regular. They had some weird food. There was a lot of weird food stuff going on in fast food places in the 80s. Can't trust it. Cannot trust it. There were no regulations. They were just selling you rats on top of rats on top of rats to eat, I bet. I don't know that for a fact. I'm just talking. Don't listen to me. I'm cutting that out. Cutting that part out.
No, you're not. No. So the mothers who were in BAD, they I don't know why I quoted mothers, by the way, because I'm sure
maybe they don't have children.
Well, maybe they just are Karens.
They can't all have kids.
Yeah.
Well, it's the 80s. I guess they could.
They're probably just Karens.
The human monsters that were in BAD.
Mm-hmm. Were they saw people who played this as trying to recruit people for their cult to practice Satanism.
That sounds like fun.
They most likely listened to heavy metal music, and were probably a teacher, which is
Just like a regular teacher?
yeah, they were
Or like a teacher of Satanism?
no, like a teacher, like a school teacher, and like preschool teachers were looked at as possible Satanists, just in this time frame.
Just because they had access to your children?
Yeah.
Probably.
And they're not in your family. They could control them with their minds, and
I wish I would have done a lot better in math.
Yeah, same. Yeah, because there was these special cults that, you know, only they knew about because they have these mind control powers, and
fair,
you know.
I bet every teacher in the world wishes they could control their students.
Yeah, I mean, when I was a teacher, that would have been, yeah.
That would have been so nice. Just like, please let me just make you not hate each other anymore.
Yeah, stop. Enough.
Oh gosh.
You're done.
You're done. Let me tell you something that hopefully you don't know about. Okay, so you know who Procter and Gamble is? Do you know about this?
Mm.
Okay, so that's exciting. So Procter and Gamble, the company, has been around since like the 1800s at least.
Oh.
Their old logo was a moon that was facing 13 stars. The 13 stars represent the 13 original colonies, and the logo was created in like 1883, so it's very old. There was this couple that was selling fucking Amway, which is an MLM. They were selling Amway products, and they started this like huge rumor that Procter and Gamble were a bunch of Satanists and were using all of their profits for Satanist stuff, whatever that means. And like we're like handing out leaflets and stuff about it and trying to convince people not to buy Procter and Gamble, obviously with the ulterior motive that they would buy their Amway stuff.
Right.
Anyway, Procter and Gamble had to sue them and spend another 20 years defending the fact that they don't know anything about Satanism, which is unfortunate for them, but whatever.
I know.
Right. So they spent 20 years trying to like clear their name, and they ended up having to change their logo because it was like just such a huge controversy that they were like, we can't keep our logo anymore. We need to have something less. And now I think it's just like a P&G or something like
super
P
basic.
and a G. Yeah, like something that couldn't be confused for Satanism even if you tried.
Right. Or it's hearsay, you know? Hearsay.
Anyway, so they sued them for libel. And I think they won. I don't know. I didn't finish reading it. But they did spend, like I said, they didn't really win because they spent 20 years having to try to shake off that stigma. I don't think we can say that. We'll take that out. I don't think we can say that. I'm not trying to get sued.
Oh, shit. Sorry.
Let's back it up. Well, okay, let's move on.
Anyway.
Let's move on. There's just going to be a bunch of clips where there's something missing and it's going to be like, I don't think we can say that. I'm not trying to get sued. Cut that out. We'll leave all that part in, but we won't leave in the part that we cut out. And then people will be like, what the fuck? That brings us to 1990 which we've already discussed, the defendants in the McMartin preschool case were acquitted. And then the second trial was a mistrial, and then they ended up dropping the charges altogether.
Yeah,
so another full circle. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about Stevie Nicks and how she was appropriated as a witch in the time when she was rising to fame, which was between like 1975 and 1980 when Satanic Panic was full swing. Only because she read a book called Triad, which is about a medieval Welsh goddess, not necessarily a witch, but in the beginning, a goddess.
So something that people worship.
Right. So, and this character's name was Rhiannon, and this is an actual book that.
Is it the song?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's where she got like
the
inspiration for Rhiannon was before she would sing Rhiannon, she'd get on stage and say, "This is a song about an old Welsh witch." But she was just a powerful goddess. But I mean, sounds better, you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, yeah. And during the rumors era, she would receive mail that referenced witchcraft and how she should be scared and that she could potentially be kidnapped because she was a witch in most people's eyes. And you know,
Why
war.
would you want to kidnap a witch if you're going to kidnap
I
anybody?
know.
Not the witch.
Like, that makes no sense.
Not the witch.
Like, go after the witch? Okay.
Okay. That's always ended well for people.
Yeah.
I mean, except for during the witch trials. But I feel like they all got cursed, so
Mhm.
it did not end well for them anyway.
Just because she wore, you know, black clothing, and she's like, no, you idiots, I wear black because it's slimming. Like,
Everybody loves
even
black.
though she
I
was
mean,
like,
look at us. We're
she, yeah, black, come on. She said, quote, I do not believe in witchcraft as a natural philosophy at all. I just think it's fun, and I love black clothes and moons and stars and Merlin hats and Mickey Mouse. But no, I do not believe in that side of it at all. And that was in 1983.
Yes.
So, in the midst of everything. And just trying to be her best self and create her best work.
And not get kidnapped.
And the fairy godmother rock star that she is.
She is a fairy godmother, isn't
Mhm.
she? I wish she was my fairy godmother.
She is.
Bring her to
She's
me.
all of us. Gotta manifest.
All I can think about is like
Come to
flowy
me.
sleeves.
Yes.
Flowy sleeves.
You know, she actually has worked over 10,000 hours to perfect her dancing.
I believe
stage.
that.
Yeah.
I believe that 1,000%.
She's a real one.
She is the OG
Mhm.
of whatever this is.
Of the Stevie.
Of
Cue dance break.
Cue dance break, yes.
This is when we need some Stevie in. No copyright.
Copyrights. Copyrights. We can't do that. The dance is probably copyright. We're gonna have to cut that out. Okay, hold on. Let's be really quiet. Perfection.
Chef's kiss.
Should I keep the cup and then pour future Bajas into it and then open it again and pour it in?
Because it's like the OG one from the.
Because it sounds a certain way. Like that could be important. That could be important if we ever get any followers.
Or even just like opening the can.
Oh. Open the can. Open the cup. Okay, open the cup, then open the can. Pour the can into the cup, then close the cup. Then open the cup and pour it into the goblet. Then close the cup. That's a whole episode, right?
That's a lot of steps. It's ASMR.
ASMR is just a bunch of steps really quietly, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that she said that just to protect herself? Or do you think that she actually means what she says and is not a witch at all?
I don't know. I've always kind of
We
had
don't
back
know
and
her.
forth. Yeah, we don't know
That's
her.
accurate.
We can't speak for her, though she's like
Not without a lawsuit. Okay.
I think at the time when everything was happening, like what we've been talking about, it was such a like scary time for people like that, especially someone like her who's such a rising star that like if she said, oh yeah, I'm a witch, I
Right.
practice this and that, and I manifest and I do divination, they'd be like, oh, witch, murder at the stake, you know, like her
Right,
career
it would have
be over.
It would have been over. I agree.
So she couldn't really be truly, I don't know, I don't want to say honest.
Right, because we don't know
Right.
what is honest
And
and
maybe-
what is.
Maybe she just likes those things, and you can like those things and not be a witch, or you can,
Right.
you know.
Or you can dislike those things and still be a witch.
Exactly.
Though I've not yet met a witch that doesn't like stars and moons, so
Right.
we'll see.
Let us know. In 1993, speaking of Binks, was when Hocus Pocus came out, and that was kind of when things really like died down by then. Hocus Pocus really kind of like rose to fame, which actually at first, I don't know if you guys know this, but it was released in July,
Mm-hmm.
and it totally did not do good because of that. It flopped.
I bet I can tell you why.
Because the Nightmare Before Christmas came out.
No, because of the West Memphis 3 case. You have to bribe her with something, and you don't have any snacks. What is that? Oh. You don't want that?
Come on.
This bitch. It's one of those ones where you're like, oh, I know everything about this. And then when you're in front of the camera, you're like, I didn't realize that Hocus Pocus came out that year. But also in 1993, like in the spring, summer of 93, 3 boys went missing after they had been hanging out together in a certain wooded area. They were found,
Of course.
like, just brutally, awfully unalived.
Mm-hmm.
So I watched a documentary about it, and in the opening scenes, there were like showing the police footage.
Ooh.
I do not recommend watching that. Even I, who can like sit through a surgery or a procedure on a patient without flinching, had a really hard time watching that. Like, I looked away.
Because it was so brutal.
It was brutal. And like, you can understand why people would want to blame that on a ritual or an other or someone that's not human to them. Like, you can understand where people are coming from.
The evil of it.
Because it is evil. It's awful. And they were tied up and stuff. I'm not going to go into detail, but it was just like everything was kind of weird and very creepy. And they knew exactly who they were going to blame. It came down to this guy and his two friends who were like known goths, known metalheads. They listened to freaking Iron Maiden and Marilyn Manson or whatever.
Of course.
And they wore their band t-shirts, which are probably just as scary as my Halloween t-shirt. Right. We would both be getting arrested if we were in West Memphis in the 90s.
Yeah.
And these boys were teenagers, and one of them had like a really low IQ, because that happens. And he was specifically targeted by the police. He was tried separately from the other guy. So anyway, they ended up arresting them all. They got search warrants. They arrested them all. They tried the one guy separate from the other two because I'm not really sure why they decided to do that. I don't know if it's because his IQ or what the situation was.
They could like break him.
Yeah, well, and they did. They pretty much talked him through everything they wanted him to say. They made the Damien Eccles take a polygraph test.
Never take the polygraph.
Never take the polygraph test. I made Damien Eccles take a polygraph test. Yeah, they did make Jesse take one too, because they said he's lying his ass off in front of him, and then we're like feeding him the words to say to make the polygraph read that he was telling the truth. Which, just like, how do you think you're serving any kind of justice when you're doing all of that? Like, you are so short-sighted and just as evil as anyone who would hurt anyone if you are willing to try to put someone away without any sort of evidence or proof outside of your own biases. Like, you shouldn't be in public service at all.
No.
But I digress. So these three boys were all arrested and sentenced to prison time, and I think Damien was actually sentenced to death. Yes, and then they appealed, and then, so things that helped them. Well, Damien's mom was interviewed by the police, and she told them, he was with me the night that these murders were supposed to happen. Right. He was actually on the phone with somebody or somebody's that he knew, his girlfriend or somebody like that. So, you know, you have phone records, but obviously not every landline is tapped. It's not like they can listen in and confirm that it was him. But like his mom saying that he was home, he has an alibi. Yeah. And for the 90s, that's a pretty legitimate alibi. But they wanted him. And that's what it was. They wanted him because he was weird and he was other. Yeah. And it's easier to blame it on someone who's other than someone who's, say, a step-parent of one of the kids.
Right.
But I won't get into that. And if you guys want to know more, let us know that you want an in-depth review of this case, because it's one that I find really fascinating. When Jesse was questioned, he was the one with the lower IQ. He was picked up from the police and questioned and polygraphed, and they didn't start recording for 5 hours after they picked him up.
Of course.
So the whole time they're coaching him on what to say. They're threatening him. They're trying to bribe him. Like, you can see your girlfriend. This will all be over in a few minutes if you just say X, Y, and Z. Like, truly horrendous. Yeah. Very unjust. So his trial was separate. Jesse went first. He was convicted. And then he had been coerced to testify against the other guys, Damien and the other guy. But then he changed his mind and he didn't testify against them, which was good. That's good. But they were also convicted. Like I said, one of them was convicted supposedly to death, which I think was Damien. And then in 1996, so 3 years later, and I think they were convicted in 94, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, in 96, the documentary Paradise Lost is premiered, which is about this case and how they were innocent and they were wrongly convicted. There was a second Paradise Lost that came out. These guys were did not get out until 2011. They were in jail from like 1993 because they were arrested. They're not getting out on bail. Yeah. Because these are poor kids in the South.
Right.
they don't have the money to bail, and they don't have the money for good lawyers, so they're appointed these shitty lawyers who also want to see them fry for the most part.
Yeah.
And they're in prison until 2011, and they only got out because they signed an offered plea. Do you know what that is? Mm-hmm. So an offered plea is when someone pleads guilty while still retaining their own innocence. So they're pleading guilty, but they're saying, I didn't do this, but I'm pleading guilty to this so that I can get out. When you do an offered plea, you can't sue the government or the state for putting you in prison because you're saying, I'm admitting guilt even though I'm not guilty. Like, that's what it is.
Yeah.
I'm admitting guilt even though I'm not guilty so that I can get out of prison or whatever, so I don't have to go to prison or whatever the case may be. The worst thing about this whole situation, aside from these boys going to prison for a good portion of their life, which is terrible and awful, and could have 100% been prevented. They were all teenagers. Yeah. And they didn't get out until they're in their 30s. Like, what is wrong with people? Anyway, that is a really horrible aspect, but I do think that worse than that is the fact that the true person or people who did this to these kids has never been caught because the police and this local government focused so much time on trying to catch these others and get them for something and put them away forever.
Because they look different.
They're so short-sighted that they miss the bigger picture, which is that there's still someone out there that may or may not still be alive that ended these children's lives in a brutal, awful way. And you just let that person walk because you didn't like some kid wearing makeup or having black hair or listening to heavy metal. Like, you shouldn't be in public service. No. You should be in prison. Like, you should be put away forever and kept away from society because your priorities are not straight. No. Anyway, I feel really strongly about this case, in case you didn't know. And then they do DNA testing in 2011 or 2007 that proved,
which is so late, like for DNA
that the
testing.
DNA didn't match Damien or any of the other guys on like the strings and stuff. So it didn't say who it matched, so it wasn't conclusive, but it did say it was not a conclusive match for any of these boys. And that wasn't enough to get them off because the same corrupt judge was still in power. And when you want to do an appeal like that, you have to go through the same judge that convicted you. Gotcha. In this case, he wasn't going to let them go no matter what. They could have come up and fucking Jesus Christ could have come back from the dead and been like, I was with them that night. They're cool. And he would have been like, fuck it, I'm going to hell already. Yeah. You're staying in prison forever. And Jesus, you can go sit with them too. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like, really outrageous.
Thanks a lot, Satanic Panic.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Satanic Panic.
It's still relevant today.
Today, the Satanic Panic is still, I wouldn't say alive and well, but it's more of like a conspiracy theory that still exists. You have things like Pizzagate and QAnon and people who believe that the elites run a pedo ring and that's where all the missing children go, which is based in some fact because we know about Jeffrey Epstein and we know about the fact that child trafficking is a legitimate problem in the United States and other countries. But are those people Satanists? No. There's nothing Satan or ritualistic about it. No. And Satanists are really great people. We are not conspiracy theorists. No. For the most part, though, I do believe in aliens. Peep the socks. Mm-hmm. How can I even peep the socks, girl? You can't even tell. Anyway, they're aliens mowing grass. We gotta peep your socks, too.
Oh, my socks have llamas on them.
They're llama socks. They say no problema.
Alpaca.
Oh.
My bags.
I was way off. Those are alpacas, then. They're not llamas.
Oh, I always forget that those are different.
Yeah. I don't know.
Llama's a llama to me.
Are they? Thank you for tuning in. Let us know if you have any suggestions for our next week's episode. That's right. We're doing this every week. Every Friday.